Exposed, the incredible truth that froze the judge, 12 years of hidden struggles revealed. Jake Thompson stood at the podium, heart racing, as the weight of his mother's sacrifices throbbed in his chest. Just months ago, he daydreamed about starting a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids, a way to honor the legacy of a single mother who had waited tables, pouring coffee and squeezing lemon slices with tired hands while providing him a bright future. The small Midwestern town of Maple Grove was familiar, reassuring, yet the shadow of economic inequality loomed large, whispering doubts of change as he now prepared to expose a dark secret hidden within the walls of their beloved community. As murmurs filled the air, his eyes met Sarah's, his fellow teacher and recent love interest. Her warm smile tugged at his heart, but the worry etched on her brow pulled him back to reality. Her family had deep ties with the town council, the very council that had turned a blind eye to the injustices Jake could no longer ignore. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight flooding the town hall as townsfolk gathered, a sea of faces filled with hope, anger, and skepticism. Jake couldn't shake the tension tightening in his chest. A familiar figure caught his eye: Mr. Hargrove, the beloved war veteran, who had been unjustly denied his veterans' benefits by the council. The scars on his weathered face spoke more than words ever could. Jake's determination surged amidst the doubt that set in. He clutched the podium, feeling every eye on him. He was tired of living in the shadow of inaction. "This town deserves the truth," he declared, his voice trembling yet defiantly steady. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As Jake paced back and forth, passion pouring from every word, the tension rose. He recounted tales of his mother's grit, how she fought against all odds, and how Mr. Hargrove had the same fire within him. Suddenly, the judge, the steady hand of democracy in their town, rose from behind the gavel. The crowd held its breath. He cleared his throat and shared shocking evidence from a long-forgotten incident involving corruption and betrayal that had rippled through the town, leaving faces twisted in disbelief. The room erupted in gasps. Jake felt his blood run cold as whispers of trust and betrayal darted between family members and neighbors. Fear clutched him. The future of Maple Grove hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of truth. Should they uphold a crumbling status quo? Or should they rally behind the spirit of justice he desperately pursued? Captured in the tense air were echoes of his mother's teachings. He shifted, uncertainty gripping him tightly. But then voices began to rise: the teacher's lounge, the diner, even the children in the park. They began to chant for change. Jake's heart swelled with hope, yet he knew the weight of that hope often bore the heaviest burdens. As the judge's gavel fell, silence draped over the crowd like a heavy shroud. Would they embrace the light of truth or retreat back into the shadows? Jake stood, resolved to stay the course, questioning the fabric of the community he loved. Could it transform, overcome years of inequality, and step forward into the unknown? The final moment hung in the air, a question lingering as he clenched his fists, preparing for whatever came next. The air hung thick with anticipation, every gaze pinned on Jake as he took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The judge's hammer fell, but the weight of the moment felt heavier than ever. Jake's heart raced, a thundering reminder of everything at stake. He couldn't look away from Mr. Hargrove, whose eyes reflected a mixture of hope and anguish. "Your Honor," Jake said, gathering strength from the room's palpable energy, "this isn't just about me or my dreams for a scholarship fund. It's about the very soul of Maple Grove." He glanced around, catching sight of Sarah again. Her expression was a mix of concern and resolve. She understood the thin line they were walking. The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the growing tension. "Mr. Thompson, what you're calling for is a reckoning. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Jake swallowed hard, nodding with conviction. We can't hide behind silence anymore. This town has a history of turning a blind eye. It's time we hold ourselves accountable. We owe it to each other, especially to those like Mr. Hargrove, who have borne the brunt of neglect. A ripple of murmurs swept through the audience. Some faces betrayed anger, while others glimmered with newfound determination. It was clear that Jake's words were opening old wounds. As he spoke, Jake felt a shift. The crowd began to stir with voices rising in agreement. A woman in the back shouted, "He's right. We deserve better." Her declaration sparked a wave of clapping, echoing in the hall like the heartbeat of a community awakening. Mrs. Jensen, the librarian, stood up. "We tell our children to stand up for what's right. Why don't we do the same?" Her voice cracked, revealing the years of frustration held back. The judge, both impressed and concerned, leaned forward. "This isn't something to approach lightly. Change comes with a price. Are you prepared to face that?" Jake's palms were sweaty on the podium, but he met the judge's gaze, his resolve crystal clear. "What's the price of standing by while our friends suffer?" "I am ready." "We all are." Feeling a swell of unity, he continued. "Together, we can break this cycle of oppression. We can lift our community into a brighter future. Honesty, transparency, these aren't just words, they are our lifelines." The weight of his mother's sacrifices echoed in his heart. Every moment of her struggle fed into this very moment. He glanced at Sarah, who now had a fierce spark in her eyes, and felt a sense of determination swell within him. But just as hope began to take its flight, the town's mayor stood up, the color drained from his face. This can't be happening," he stammered, panic unveiling itself with each word. "You'll ruin everything." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The mayor's desperation was like cold water splashed on the fire ignited by Jake's dream. What hidden truths could he unleash? Would they put their community in even greater peril? Jake's heart raced as doubts surged through his mind. Silence crept back into the hall, the air thickened with tension. Would they let fear dictate their lives? He took another breath, searching for the right words. "This isn't about destruction. It's about building a community where we all belong. Are we not worth fighting for?" His voice broke through the fog of uncertainty, igniting something deep within the crowd. They were yearning for change, but could they overcome their fear of the unknown? With the dawn of a new resolve rising, Jake scanned the faces around him, filled with hope yet cloaked in anxiety. He realized the journey would be hard-fought and perhaps even tragic. What if they lost everything in their pursuit of truth? But just like that, a single voice broke the silence from deep in the crowd, powerful and resolute. "We stand with you, Jake. Together." A wave of determination swept over the assembly once more. The question lingered in the air as anger and hope battled for supremacy. Would they forge ahead, or allow the walls of fear to reclaim their town? Jake felt the moment teetering on the edge of revolution. As the gavel struck once more, he knew he had only ignited the fight. The real battle was just beginning. What choices would they make when the truth demanded action? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stared into the sea of familiar faces. Mrs. Jensen's words still echoed in his ears, surprising him with their weight. He felt the surge of support behind him like a wave ready to crash against the shore. But fear lingered in the corners of the room. The mayor stood firm, a pillar of authority, his panic radiating as he glanced nervously at the judge. "Mr. Thompson, you speak of community," the mayor said, his voice strained. "But what will you do if everything comes crashing down? The funding, the resources, it all hinges on keeping things stable." "That's the problem, isn't it?" Jake shot back. "Stability has meant turning our eyes away. We need to face our truths head-on, even if they hurt. Only then can we really grow." The judge nodded slowly, his stern expression softening just a fraction. "Weigh your words carefully, young man. Truth has a way of uncovering, but it can also fracture bonds. As Jake stood there, he caught Sarah's unwavering gaze, her expression lighting a fire within him. He knew what was at stake: friendships, trust, lives. Would he lead them into the unknown or shrink back under pressure? Judge, let us not pretend that we all felt the impacts of keeping quiet, Jake implored. Families have splintered, opportunities lost. We owe it to Mr. Hargrove, whose story is just one of so many. We need to stand together, to embrace this battle. He could tell by the shifting winds of uncertainty in the crowd that his words were making an impact. A man in the front row clenched his fist, his face a picture of determination. Enough is enough, he shouted, his voice cutting through the lingering silence. We stand with Jake. Time to change Maple Grove. Cheers erupted, voices lifting in solidarity. Some clapped, others raised their fists, and Jake could feel that raw, electric energy pulsing through the room. Hope surged, wrapping around him like a warm embrace, but the mayor stepped back, desperation bleeding into anger. You are risking everything, he shouted. What happens when the town turns on you? This place is fragile. You think everyone wants change? You'll find the opposite. Jake's heart sank at the harsh reality of the mayor's words. He understood that not everyone shared the desire for revolution, but the truth felt so much heavier than fear. They'll always fear what they don't understand, he said, his voice steady. But hope? Hope is the first step toward understanding. The judge cleared his throat, scanning the room filled with newfound resolve. Then let this assembly be a forum for your voices. You want change, I will allow the dialogue. But understand, this is not a free-for-all. It's a responsibility, one that risks upheaval. A palpable pause settled over the room like a shroud. An anticipation that crackled with possibility, but also dread. Would this be the moment they were writing history, or would it become the chapter of their demise? Then Sarah rose, her spirit burning like a beacon. We can't fall into fear now. We have to choose to be brave. We owe it to our future. Her fervor rippled through the room, igniting another wave of agreement and determination. Energies collided, building momentum as Jake felt the weight of the moment shift entirely. Could they sustain this, make their voices heard in the face of fearful opposition? As voices melded into one, Jake realized this wasn't merely about him anymore, it was about everyone in the room, every story that had gone unheard. They were all in this together, but just as the crowd's excitement reached its peak, a new voice emerged. A shadowy figure in the back stood and began pacing forward, drawing every eye. You think you're ready for truth? It was Mark, known around town as a truth-teller but also a provocateur, his gaze ice-cold. Let me ask, can you handle what it really means? Jake felt the air shift again, nerves shooting through the crowd like a live wire. What truth did Mark carry, and would it bind them together, or tear them apart? Mark stepped into the light, his presence instantly commanding attention. Every eye in the room was fixed on him, a mixture of curiosity and dread. I've seen you all in your comfortable lives, pretending everything is perfect, he began, his voice sharp like broken glass. But let's get real. You want change, but how much are you willing to sacrifice for it? Are you ready to confront your own demons? Are you ready to admit to the secrets we've all lived with? Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just any discussion anymore, this was about to get personal. You think the town's darkness lies only in the shadows? Think again. Mark's eyes darted around the room, challenging every listener. What about the secrets you've kept from each other? The lies that have festered right under your noses? The air shifted, tension rising like steam. Jake noticed Sarah's fingers twitch nervously beside him. Mark's words struck deep, provoking unspoken fears and buried resentments. I'm talking about the father drinking himself into oblivion while the kids hide in their rooms. Mark paused, letting the silence linger. I'm talking about the mothers who've been forced to sew smiles on their faces while battling their own hopelessness. Is that what you want to change? Gasps sifted through the crowd, and Jake felt the crack forming in their unity. Would they withstand this challenge, or would they crumble? He wanted to scream for them to stay strong, but Mark's words had unsettled everyone, stirring insecurities and fears. Truth isn't just about what you share, it's about what you've buried deep. Can you all face that? Mark pressed on, undeterred. I don't care if you're uncomfortable. He continued. The truth can tear you apart or bring you together. It depends on how you handle it. Jake took a step forward, his heart racing. We can handle it. We have to handle it. This isn't just about the town anymore, it's about us as people. Mark's gaze pierced through him. Is that right? Then tell me what's your darkest secret, Jake. I only ask because if you're going to lead this fight, you better be ready to show them everything you've hidden. Because they will come for you. Sweat formed at the back of Jake's neck. He thought about the struggles he had faced, his father's silent battles, the shame that had followed them. Did he have the strength to lay it all bare? And would the crowd accept him after hearing it? A murmur rose, uncertainty dancing through the room like a ghost. Could they truly build a future on cracks and fissures, or would those lines of vulnerability lead to their collapse? Don't let his words deter you. Sarah shouted, her voice ringing clear over the whispers. This is the moment we expose everything, together. We can't be afraid. But Jake was still shaken. He felt the pressures of expectation and fear wrestling within him. How could he inspire people to embrace honesty when he himself was scared of the chaos it might unleash? Yet deep down, a flicker of ambition ignited. If he was going to stand as a lighthouse in a storm, he had to lead by example. Mark, he said, suddenly finding a sure footing in the chaos, I may not know how to take the first step, but I do know we can't go back to silence. We stand together, or we drown separately. With his resolve hardening, he faced the crowd. Their eyes were wide, waiting. Fear mingled with hope, a tenuous balance that could tip either way. Would they stand with him, or abandon ship? The room buzzed with an electric energy, the air charged with anticipation. And then, amid the uncertain noise, a quiet voice rose from the back. But what about the police investigation? If we bring everything to light, what if it leads us to something worse? The crowd fell silent again, all attention shifting toward the new voice. What dark secrets lay deeper than they had thought? Would revealing the truth truly bind them together, or expose deeper flaws that could tear them apart? Jake's heart raced. The moment felt pivotal, like standing on the edge of a cliff, winds lashing against him, urging him forward or pulling him back. He scanned the faces of those around him, each etched with confusion, fear, and flickers of curiosity. They were waiting, not just for an answer but for someone to break the ice, to define the next chapter of their collective story. As the silence stretched, he could feel Mark's presence still looming large. There was power in Mark's challenge, but also a vulnerability that was infectious. What if it leads us to something worse? Echoed in Jake's mind. That question hung heavy, waiting to be addressed. Sometimes, Jake began, voice steady but uncertain, the worst is behind us. Sometimes exposing the truth allows us to heal instead of hiding in fear. His own words surprised him, but they came from a place of raw emotion, the heart of someone who had lived with pain. Sarah stepped closer to him, her eyes fierce. What matters is that we acknowledge our struggles, even if they lead us into uncomfortable territory. We can't keep living in the shadows. This town deserves better. Mark nodded, a faint glimmer of admiration passing through him. See? That's the spirit. But let us not band together just for the sake of unity. Let us be clear on what we're risking. Jake felt the heaviness of that statement. The very mention of risk turned the crowd's pulse up another notch. Balancing on the brink of oblivion and revelation, could they handle what lay on the other side? I know what it's like to carry secrets, Jake said, his voice rising as he sought to rally their spirits. I've fought battles in silence, wearing my own mask. I remember nights spent wondering if anyone could feel this burden too. He felt the layers of his own fears peeling away as he spoke, each word breaking down barriers he thought were unshakable. A woman from the crowd, someone Jake recognized from the grocery store, spoke up. "I lost my son to the darkness. I've blamed myself, drowned myself in guilt, all while pretending to be okay. If we don't speak up now, how will we ever move on?" Her voice trembled, emotions twisting like teenage vines wrapped around a wooden trellis. Jake's own heart twisted in response. Her pain reminded him of his unspoken thoughts, the ones he tucked away like old letters too painful to read. The room whispered low, a ripple of shared grief and surprise inhabiting the space they were in. "Your pain is real, just like mine," Jake acknowledged, suddenly emboldened by her bravery. "We must speak our truths, not just for ourselves, but for those who aren't here to talk about their struggles." A murmur of agreement rose, swelling in the air. Mark saw this moment weaving strength through vulnerability. "Perhaps this energy could push us towards the truth we've been running from." Just as the momentum began to build, another voice, deeper this time, pierced through the layers of newfound courage. "But what happens when the truth damages us further? Isn't ignorance sometimes a blessing?" Jake fought to maintain eye contact, challenging every skeptic in the room. "What's worse? Facing pain together or remaining silent and letting it consume us from within?" The unresolved tension intensified. It was clear they stood at a crossroads. The dialogue shifted from private fears to public responsibilities. How far could they go? They needed each other, yet would they risk the very sanctuary they had created? As faces turned to Mark, he gestured towards the door. "Then why don't we collectively decide what to lay bare? Each of you take a step forward and unveil something hidden. If we're going to do this, let's do it right." Jake's breath caught. Would they embrace this challenge? Or would the revelation become a chasm that divided them? As he stood there, heart pounding in the silence, he realized the choice was no longer just his. It belonged to them all. The room shifted, the air vibrating with uncertainty and hope. Everyone felt the weight of Mark's challenge, and the pause that followed felt like the calm before a storm. Jake looked around, searching for familiar faces: Sarah's calm determination, the woman's raw sorrow, and even Mark's intensity as he coaxed their hidden fears into the light. "Okay," Jake said, stepping slightly forward, feeling the eyes of those around him focus on him like a spotlight. "We've talked about pain, about darkness, but what if we also talked about healing? What if we openly shared how we've tried to lift ourselves up despite the struggles?" His words brought a flicker of emotion in the crowd. Some faces softened, others still held apprehension. But they were here, all gathered, united under an unspoken negotiation: the desire to connect, to find out if they could truly be free. "Let's start with one truth," Sarah urged, her voice rising slightly above the murmurs. "We're not alone in this. We never were." Several people nodded, a rare solidarity starting to weave through the tension. Jake's heart swelled. Maybe, just maybe, they could channel the collective pain into something transformative. "Who wants to go first?" Mark asked, scanning the crowd. "Each story will make us stronger, and it'll help to shift the weight we're all carrying." A young man at the back stepped forward hesitantly, his hand shaking slightly. "I've never shared this with anyone," but he took a deep breath. "I've struggled with anxiety since I was a kid. I keep fighting to feel normal, but it's like running in circles." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed forward, buoyed by the anxious nods of encouragement. "But I'm here, right? It's time to confront it, not hide from it." Jake felt a cascade of relief wash over him. The young man's courage had unlocked a door. A few more hands shot up: a middle-aged woman, her eyes glistening, a teenager who looked like he was still trying to discover his own voice. Each confession peeled back layers of hurt and revealed their vulnerabilities. "Last year, I lost my job," the woman confessed. "I felt worthless, like I was a burden to my family. I wore a smile every day, but inside I was breaking. I thought if I just acted like everything was okay, then maybe everyone else would believe it too." There was a ripple of agreement. Jake felt the collective weight shift slightly, hope mingled with heartbreak. As more voices joined murmurs of regret, shame, and fleeting moments of joy, the room started to fill with a symphony of shared stories, connected through their pains and triumphs. Every person who spoke created an unseen bond, a web tied by common threads that had once seemed too fragile to sustain. When the last voice fell silent, Mark stepped back, wiping away a tear. "See? This is where it starts." He glanced around, the shadows of doubt replaced by a faint sparkle of possibility. "Together, we can transform this pain into purpose." But what do we do next? How do we turn these words into action? The weight of his question settled heavily over the group. It was a turning point, a crossroads that beckoned them toward the future. The room buzzed with the promise of connection, yet a whirlwind of uncertainty loomed large on the horizon. Jake could feel it in the pit of his stomach. They were standing at the edge again, but this time, they weren't alone. The moment demanded focus. Just then, a voice pierced through the noise, its skepticism slicing through the newfound hope. "But what if we take this leap, and it leads us to something darker? What if we open too many doors that can never be closed?" Jake swallowed hard, feeling the walls of fear try to creep back. Would they fall back into silence? Or would they finally dive deeper into the truth, no matter how uncomfortable? "Will we take the risk?" he asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Who was willing to stand and fight for the truth we're so scared to face? And within that question lay the possibility of everything transforming or falling apart. A choice waited, glimmering with hope and filled with uncertainty. Jake's heart raced as he looked around the room. Each face reflected uncertainty, shadows of fear ebbing and flowing as if the very question he posed had the power to tilt the balance between dread and liberation. The room fell quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath. Then, the same young man who had spoken about his anxiety stepped forward again, but this time he seemed stronger. "You know," he began, a new edge in his voice, "I've been hesitant my whole life, terrified of what might happen if I let someone see the real me. But I realized, if I don't open up, how will I ever heal?" Jake nodded, feeling his own voice ready to crash into the open waters. "Yes. It's about being brave enough to face what we fear." Warmth blossomed in his chest as he continued, "We're not just taking a risk for ourselves, but for each other." A woman standing next to him took a deep breath, her hand trembling again as if she were turning a doorknob to a room she'd long kept locked. "I lost my son," she admitted, her voice nearly a whisper. "And I buried that pain, thought it would go away. But not talking about it." She shook her head slowly, droplets of sorrow pooling in her eyes. "It's only made it worse." Jake felt a wave of empathy sweep through him. Her pain hung in the air like an uninvited guest. "That's heavy," he said softly, "but you're not alone in this. Sharing your truth can be the first step into a light you thought had disappeared." As she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, another person spoke up, a teenager who had previously kept quiet. "What if we were all honest about our struggles?" he asked, determination shining in his gaze. "Not just in this room but with everyone else? Wouldn't that change everything?" A ripple of agreement fluttered through the crowd. As voices joined in a chorus of experiences, loss, addiction, regrets, the energy shifted until it buzzed vibrantly. Each person's truth seemed to amplify the others, turning the room into a sanctuary where vulnerability became strength. "I want to share something too," Sarah said, stepping closer. "A while back, I thought about ending it all. But I found that writing down my feelings helped me face them. I still battle depressive thoughts, but writing became my lifeline." She looked around, meeting each gaze with deep intensity. "We can be lifelines for each other. We can hold on to hope." Jake felt tears pricking at the edges of his vision. Here they were, unearthing fears and lifting burdens just by sharing and listening. It felt transformative, like the dawn breaking after a long, dark night. "Okay," Mark chimed in, his passion igniting the atmosphere further. "We've shared, but what happens next? What if we committed to being open with each other moving forward? Maybe we could build something, meet regularly, check in, form a support network. As the idea settled over the group, excitement bubbled. The prospect of continuing this path of shared healing felt like a fire igniting in tired hearts. "Can we do that?" Jake asked, the hope in his voice palpable. "Can we commit to hold space for one another? To grow together?" One by one, hands raised, voices calling out affirmatively. The fear and uncertainty began to transform into something else, something strong. But just as the excitement reached its peak, the skeptical voice from before spoke again, now louder. "What happens when the shadows come back? When life threatens to drown out this newfound light?" The room stilled, the energy tinged with a thick kind of reality. Jake felt a knot forming in his stomach again, realizing not every question had an easy answer. "Then we face it," he replied firmly, trying to stoke that flame of courage within them all. "Together." And within the depths of that answer lay a fierce battle, not just against their inner demons but the expectations of a world often reluctant to embrace vulnerability. What lay ahead was uncertain, the courage to confront the inevitable shadows danced on the horizon. Would they be ready when the darkness threatened to steal back the light they had fought so hard to find? A hush swept over the room, as Jake's words hung in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. Eyes darted around, apprehension settling in like heavy fog. The challenge posed by the skeptic loomed large, triggering what felt like a dance between hope and doubt. "Together," Mark echoed softly, his brow furrowing. "But what does that really mean? How can we do that when life gets tough?" Jake could see the worry etched on everyone's faces. The enthusiasm that had sparked moments earlier now flickered, threatened to extinguish. He took a breath, steadying himself. "It means showing up for each other, as we started to do tonight. A simple text, a phone call. It doesn't have to be grand, just consistent. We can be there when the shadows return." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes brightening. "Like setting up a regular group? A safe space to be ourselves, no judgment?" "Exactly." Jake felt a surge of hope. "We could share our struggles, our small victories. We can remind each other that falling is part of the journey." Laughter simmered in the air, a fragile melody that started to break the tension. "Like a support band for our mental health." The teenager chimed in, a grin breaking across his face. The more they discussed it, the more the idea spread, wrapping itself around their hearts like a comforting hug. Jake could see nods of agreement, even from the skeptical voice at the back. Something was shifting, it felt electric. But just as the laughter bubbled and the room felt alive with possibility, the woman who had spoken about her son looked somber again. "What if I can't reach out? What if I'm too lost in my pain?" Tears hovered in her eyes, threatening to spill over. "That's okay," Jake replied gently. "We've all been there. What's key is knowing you don't have to wait until you're okay to reach out. We'll walk through the darkness together, even when it feels suffocating." Mark stepped up to take her hand, a flicker of kindness igniting between them. "These moments, they light the way. Let us share our struggles, not only when they're fresh, but as they unfold. No shame in that." The room began to buzz with murmurs and nods, the weight lifting little by little. Hope hovered in the air, and Jake smiled, feeling the warmth radiate from a collective heart raw and exposed yet beating strong. "Let us do it," Sarah said, her voice rising above the others. "Let us form our group and start this journey together. We owe it to ourselves." Heads nodded in agreement, and a rush of energy rolled through the room, affirming that they were not alone in their battles. They had found something beautiful in their vulnerability, a shared commitment to light each other's way. Just then, a newcomer entered the room. With weary eyes and a hesitant step, he looked around, confusion etched on his face. I didn't mean to interrupt. His voice faltered, filled with a quiet desperation that echoed through their gathering. Jake's heart skipped a beat. This was uncharted territory. Would they welcome him in, or would the space they had carved out suddenly feel fragile again? "Come," he called out, extending his hand, "you're exactly who we want here. Together, we'll find our way." Would this new face be an anchor for the group, or would he prove to be a shadow that threatened to change everything? Jake felt that familiar knot of uncertainty, knowing all too well that their journey was just beginning. The newcomer took a cautious step forward, hesitating slightly before accepting Jake's outstretched hand. Jake felt the weight of the moment, sensing that everyone's eyes were on this stranger. What story lay behind those tired eyes? "Thank you," the man said, his voice shaky but earnest. I've been looking for a place like this." I didn't know if I could walk in, but he trailed off, surveying the small group that had found warmth in vulnerability. "We understand," Jake replied, trying to make him feel at ease. "We've all faced storms. Just know you're welcome here." The man nodded, forcing a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Something unspoken hung between them, an understanding of uncharted emotions, of battles not yet fought. As he took a seat on the edge of a circle formed by the others, Jake could feel the energy in the air waver. "What's your name?" Sarah asked gently, a spark of kindness in her voice. "Ryan," he answered, shifting in his seat, as though grappling with an invisible weight. I've had a tough time lately. I lost my job, and with it, I lost my sense of purpose." I just feel his voice cracked, like I'm drowning. The group fell silent, the tone of the meeting shifting to something more profound. Each face displayed empathy, compassion rising like a tide. "I know how that feels," Mark spoke up, his voice steady. "It can make you question everything, the worth, the path. But reaching out, being here, that can actually bring a glimmer of hope. No one has to fight alone," Jake added. "This is why we're here. It might not fix everything overnight, but it's a start." Ryan swallowed hard, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. "I didn't think anyone would understand. I thought I'd just be a burden." "No way," Sarah reassured him. "Your voice matters. Sharing is how we start to heal. Trust me, I've been there. We've all been there." Gradually, murmurs of agreement filled the air, a chorus of warmth wrapping around Ryan. Jake felt a rush of belief in their mission, their quest to foster a space of togetherness where everyone felt seen, heard, and safe. "But what if I open up and it's too much? What if it hurts?" Ryan finally confessed, vulnerability painted across his features. "Then we'll carry the weight together," Mark responded firmly. "That's the promise. We support each other, no matter how heavy." Ryan looked at Mark, then at Jake, sensing something deep within him shift, a welcoming light in the darker corners of his mind. "I'll try," he murmured, determination flickering. In that moment, the air felt charged with potential. A spark ignited, binding them closer. Together, they held the promise of something monumental, a chance to rise above their struggles. Then the unexpected happened. A knock on the door startled the group. Jake turned, his heart racing again. Who else could arrive at such a pivotal moment? "Wait here," he motioned to the group, stepping toward the sound, uncertainty tingling at his fingertips. As he opened the door, an unexpected figure stood on the threshold, someone from his past. Jake's stomach dropped. Could this person disrupt the fragile connection they had just built? Would the past shatter the hope they had begun to create? He took a deep breath, bracing himself for whatever words would come next. Standing before him was his estranged father, eyes haunted but intent. Time had etched deep lines on his face, telling stories of sorrow and hardship. "Jake," he greeted, voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know where else to go." A chill washed over Jake as he processed the moment. Anger, grief, and confusion surged within him, threatening to drown the fragile hope that had finally begun to bloom in this gathering of truth-seekers. "What do you want?" he asked cautiously, aware of the weight his words carried. "I came because I heard about what you're doing here," his father began, nervously shifting his weight. I want to talk. I know I haven't been a good dad, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to hear me out." Jake felt the room tighten around him, the tension palpable. Scanning the faces of his newly formed community, He wondered if sharing this familial burden would pull them apart or draw them closer together. Swallowing hard, he decided the truth was already out in the open. "Fine, let us talk," he replied, leaving the door ajar for a moment of possibility. As Jake stepped aside, inviting his father into the circle, an uneasy silence settled over the group. The newcomer, Ryan, watched wide-eyed, sensing the gravity of the familial confrontation unfolding in real time. Would Jake's father share the truths that had cast shadows over their lives, or would this moment crumble under the weight of unspoken wounds? Sitting before them, Jake's father looked genuine, his hands trembling slightly as he clasped them together. "I've carried a lot of guilt," he confessed, voice cracking. "I lost my way and shut down, but I recognized the damage I caused. Watching you now, speaking up, I'm proud of you. But I also know I need to take responsibility if you'll let me." The room felt electric, the air laced with anticipation and fear. This wasn't just about Jake anymore, it was about everyone laying bare their truths, setting down burdens that had long been held. "Do you mean it?" Jake questioned, emotions bubbling in his chest. "Can you handle the truth? Can you face what you've done?" His father's gaze filled with regret, sincere ownership of the past. "I'm ready. I know I can't undo the hurt, but I want to be part of the healing." "Then let us start there," Jake said, breathing deeply. "Facing our history is the first step toward creating the future we want. You can't run from what happened between us." As he spoke, Jake felt a weight lifting off his shoulders, off the collective heart of the room. Here was an opportunity, not only for personal healing but also for their community to witness the power of vulnerability. Ryan nodded in agreement, speaking up with newfound confidence. "You're not alone in your struggles. Each of us here has battles that connect us and stories that weave through our paths. Together we're stronger." Jake scanned the faces of his friends, Sarah beaming with pride, Mark nodding in solidarity, and the others reflecting resolve. In this shared moment, he realized he wasn't standing alone anymore. His community was now woven closer, bound by the understanding that every truth revealed was a thread pulling them together. His father swallowed hard, tears pooling in his eyes. "I've kept you at arm's length for too long. But I'm ready to listen and fight for our family together." As those words lingered in the air, Jake felt a harmony, both empowering and humbling, resonating through the room. Even amid uncharted territory, they could choose to reshape their fates woven from threads of love, accountability, and unity. With hearts breaking free from pain, the community began to rally again. "Yes!" Jake shouted, his voice echoing like a rallying cry. "We can face our fears together, from the smallest lies to our biggest regrets." A collective resolution arose, lifting their spirits higher. They clapped, voices lauding each confession echoed back like a harmonious song. In that moment, the future of Maple Grove lit up bright. To face the shadows felt fraught with uncertainty, but they realized the beauty lay in embracing their truth. Together, stepping back, Jake breathed, feeling lighter, stronger. "Together is how we'll overcome anything," he said, his voice steady now, "and that starts with honesty." The crowd echoed, their energy palpable. Together, they forged ahead. Hearts aligned in purpose, buoyed by the truth shared and the commitment made. With resolve now blossoming among them, they leaned into all possibilities. In that dim-lit town hall filled with shared hope and newfound courage, Jake recognized this moment as the start of deep-seated change for their community. Together, they would write a new history, one filled with compassion, understanding, and the promise of an unbreakable support network. As they dispersed that night, whispers of determination spun through the streets like a warm breeze. Their journey had just begun, the light at the end now blazing bright. While Jake's heart was full and his hopes soared, he couldn't shake the thought this was only the beginning. With the truth rattled loose, they now had to navigate the path ahead. But he knew one thing for certain: whatever lay before them, they would face it together, and that realization felt nothing short of transformative. If you felt the power of change, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm your voice matters. Comment your thoughts, Share your reactions and feelings about this ending down below. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Stand with the community.